Everybody, it's the Mad Master here. I'm doing a video today about something that I don't think we should be talking about at this point, at this juncture. But it seems to me that people are still pretty obsessed with this subject, and that is Donald Trump. Now, I do not want to give credence to this group of people that wish to discuss this in any way. And I will tell you that this is kind of a follow-up to my last video about this, about the left and the whole phenomenon of anti-Trumpism. Let's just put it this way. So I was having a conversation the other night with my friend, and we were out at a bar. I was just telling him, I think that the left needs to let go of the whole idea of Trump, because whether you believe in manifestation or, law of attraction or anything like that, one of the problems is that psychologically, even if you believe in that, if just psychological projection or psychological fixations, that if you're going to talk about something, you're giving it more power in the universe, or whether it be in real life or in the more occultic sense. There's a book called Reality Transurfing, which I started last year. Probably going to be picking up where I left off, because I stopped last year as well, probably mid May of last year. And they talk about pendulums, these, and this is kind of like a tulpa, if you look that up in magic. And these ideas are thought constructions, or just basically like thought forms that become reality. So I think that the Trump thing could be easily killed if the left wants to kill any chance of Trump succeeding in the next election. It's an easy thing to do. Just stop talking about him. Stop paying attention to him, and stop giving him free press. All you have to do, I'm against censorship, and I think big tech has gone too far in the last few years with whatever you want to call it, censorship, if it's not by the government. But a lot of these organizations and corporations have government ties, so unofficially maybe it is censorship, regardless of what you say. But the whole problem is, if media conglomerates come together and say, hey, this Trump thing is something that made us a lot of money. We know that it'll be the best thing for our bottom line if he gets reelected or if he runs again. But democracy is at risk if he runs or if he wins. So let's have this media blackout. And I'm just hypothetically talking about this. I don't really like these ideas necessarily, other than a pragmatic measure. I think it should be a voluntary thing, honestly, but I would say hypothetically, if they really do want to stop him, they need to stop talking about him. They need to stop, and even doing this video, I'm giving it more credence. And I was kind of disappointed, because I used to watch this left-wing, or listen to this left-wing commentator from the early 2000s that I used to listen, or when I first listened to him, it was from the early 2000s during the Iraq War, Mike Malloy. I went to his YouTube page and it says Trump this, Trump orange man, Trump. And I'm not going to call him a grifter for doing this, but you notice people like Jimmy Dore, or even Kyle Kulinski, to a lesser extent than Jimmy Dore, rarely talk about Trump. Kyle Kulinski talks about Trump once in a while when there's something really brazen that happens that you can't ignore. But he it seems like he tries to go after policy and go for talking about policy and how things that have the effect on the regular person rather than blabbing about Trump did this, Trump did that all day. I see that as a real problem. And the good thing about Mike Malloy is that he is going after Biden too, but I listened to watched a couple of his videos, and he's just blabbing about Trump for 20 minutes. And it's just like, and then he's also supporting some of the censorship too, which I really found puzzling, because 20 years ago, 15 to 20 years ago, he would have been aghast at George W. Bush for even recommending any kind of censorship or anything like that, or surveillance or anything like that. It seems like he's kind of changed his tune only if it has to do with Trump, and that's really a dangerous precedent. For a second, listening to Mike Malloy or watching his stuff on YouTube, I kind of like got back into that state of mind when I used to listen to him back in the day on Air America. And the thing is with Mike Malloy is like, he's really charming in this way. He reminds me of Jimmy Dore actually somewhat, because he's very just say he goes pretty nuclear on stuff. It's it's a difficult balance to follow. When people do political content, essentially they have to not run out of things to say. So when you can't, if everything's a happy day outside, it's like Nine Inch Nails, right? And I'm not saying this is what happened to Nine Inch Nails. I'm just saying, hypothetically, let's look at like the surface things that have happened. Trent Reznor gets happy, starts to write music. It's kind of lousy, it doesn't have the angst that it used to. It's kind of boring, just techno rock, let's just hypothetically say that happened. I'm not saying that that's some of his new stuff's okay, right? But the edge is not there. Henry Rollins once famously said that once he runs out of angst as far as things to be angry about, at least in a certain fashion, he would stop doing music, and he followed through on that promise. But that happens to do with these commentators. They have to keep feeding on things that are negative to pander to their audience, or do things to make money and all that. I don't make any money from this, so I don't have to worry about that. I don't have to come up with things to say. I should form my own cult though. But anyways, that's a joke. Yeah, I don't like this Trump obsession. Now Trump may have committed some crimes, obviously. So did Clinton may have as well, Hillary Clinton included. But this obsession with one person, with one political idea, is only going to feed that idea more. I mean, it's almost like, and it could lead to something worse. And this is going to sound a little weird, but all that satanic panic stuff, it was all illegitimate, right? In the late 80s, or through this late 80s or late 70s through the late 80s. But then a couple of years later, it almost like inadvertently created something else in a certain way with the black metal bands in Norway, which I love, by the way, but that's a different matter. I mean, but they were legitimately doing stuff that was, over the top. I mean, maybe not as extreme as the satanic panic people said, but these manifestations of these ideas are what are dangerous. Come up with a good alternative to Trump. Come up with a good. It just means that the media and the politicians don't have something that's extremely good as an alternative. It just proves to me that that's the case, where they have to contrast Donald Trump with other people, like, oh, well, he's a lesser, or Biden's the lesser of two evils, but, well, what's great about Biden then? If he's the lesser of two evils, what's great about him? What's spectacular about him? See, at least on the surface, Obama presented a viable alternative to Bush as far as something else to focus on. You had Bush, you had Bush, and then you had Obama. People stopped talking about Bush during Obama's tenure, so I think that may have been there may have been an impact, a deleterious impact by that happening in a way. Maybe it kind of goes against my theories about things, because people forgot about Bush in many ways and how bad he was. So maybe that's the pendulum swinging the other way too much. But we don't have an alternative to, they don't present a good alternative to Trump. Trump's a piece of shit, just like all of them, and maybe he's marginally worse or a lot worse, criminal, whatever. Russiagate was, even if it wasn't disproven completely, it was completely thrown away. I mean, there's not been really any action towards Trump on Russia. It was either exaggerated or made up. I tend to lean towards exaggerated. I think there might have been some stuff with it. There was a little fire where there was the smoke, but it was nothing compared to what they were saying. With the Rachel Maddows and the Keith Olbermanns of the world. But I think what we need to do is Trump feeds on attention. He's a narcissist. Trump feeds on outrage. He will always have his cult, because it is a cult. There's no doubt about it. I don't think someone like Charles Warwick is in the cult. I think he just I think that's the formulation of the only thing that he kind of accepts in politics, sort of. People like that, or Razor Fist, or so, for example. Two people I do watch, by the way, even though I take them with a grain of salt when it comes to the Trump thing. But we need to starve Trump of attention. That's his oxygen. I mean, not to go into some woo kind of theory shit, but new age stuff, but he's a Gemini, and I can relate to that, because I am one too. We love attention. We love people talking about us, it's our obsession. We love the spotlight. And so that's why I can see where Trump is coming from with his whole thing. If you give him that attention, he will rise. He will, regardless if it's negative or positive. But if you starve him, if you stop paying attention to him, if you paint a picture that Trump is an insignificant and little threat in a certain way. See, the media in 2015 and 2016 definitely underestimated Trump in many ways, but they still paid a huge amount of attention to him. They gave him free press. I would think it was like $80 billion. Matt Taibbi said, the media gave free press for Trump. They could have easily talked about other candidates and just not even ran stories about Trump, But obviously the debate stage was where he made his star shine with the Republicans and so forth. So maybe it was inevitable. If Bernie Sanders would have won in 2016, I think it's very likely that Trump would have not won. I've looked into this for years as far as how things went. They were both, at least perceived as anti-establishment enough that I think if Bernie did win the nomination, he had a fighting chance beyond Hillary Clinton ever did, because people hate Hillary. Even a lot of liberals hate Hillary. I mean, I can say, I talk to people on the left, and they've always said, "Oh, Hillary just seems like she's toxic." They just don't like her, and can call it sexism or whatever. Are they saying that about? They're not saying that about other women. Like, they don't say that about Jill Stein. It's not about being a strong woman. It's about having a certain acidic personality that Trump has the same thing in many ways. They're kind of mirrors of each other with their acidic kind of personalities. And Laura, I mean, I'm trying to think of female politicians that don't have that. Female politicians have a hard time because they do have to, at least how our culture is designed, or how it's come up, it is more that they do have to emulate men in many ways. So there is a dissonance. There is a kind of, when you see them, there is kind of like this unease that people feel, whether it's culturally acclimated or it's just maybe it's a natural thing. I don't know. I'm not going to say, I'm not going to go there because that's not my place. I'm not an evolutionary psychologist or anything like that. So whether or not those two things are related, I don't know. But I think that Hillary does have it's like Sharon Osbourne, right? She has that kind of bitchy thing to people. Not all female politicians have that. Obviously Kamala Harris definitely has that, maybe more in a way. But not all female politicians have that. There have been plenty that do not have that. And I would say like early on, she did not have that back in like the 90s. Even when she was stumping for things, she didn't have as much of it. But yeah, there is that aspect. But whether or not that has to do with how things are ran in the world and culturally, like women have to overcompensate in their masculinity to appeal to a wide populace. I don't know when it's subconscious or natural or whatever. More testosterone. There are studies that say that women that assume more dominant positions do produce more testosterone. There's been studies about that. But the whole point of this is that the malaise that the left feels towards Trump, it's only feeding on itself and making things worse. It's like you starve a cell, a physical cell of oxygen, it will die of food. And Trump is someone, and his whole phenomenon is something that is starved for attention. Now, with tech censorship, I've thought this over a lot. You used to have so many different conspiracy channels on YouTube, and it used to be more of a commonplace thing to see stuff that was uncensored. But the ideas were more on the fringe than they are now. And in a way, the censorship has pushed back some of those ideas and stuff, but it with Trump though, maybe Alex Jones, people don't know what's happening with him and what he's saying nowadays, but with Trump, it's a different story because there is a cult. What Trump can always come out and say to his followers that, oh, look at me getting censored, I'm the martyr, the deep state is after me, or the QAnon, can say that. So when that happens, that is a problem that he can use to bolster his claims of being a martyr and all that. Whereas if he was just, he might remain, I would say he would retain some popularity if he wasn't censored, and if he was ignored. But I don't think that the stakes would be as high, because that attention would not feed into his ego, the mainstream negative attention. We talked about something else. He would just fade into the background, is my point. He'd be like, oh, that guy again, that annoying guy. And that's part of the reason why I've never been on that anti-Trump train as much as other people on the left, is because I can see this happening. Another reason why is because I think a lot of these conspiracy evangelical nut jobs that support Trump are dangerous, but I don't see them as having the power that big tech companies, corporations, the military industrial complex, all those things have. A case in point, who is more dangerous to the welfare of humanity, the welfare of your average citizen? The MyPillow guy, or someone like Mark Zuckerberg? Who has more clout? The obvious question is MyPillow guy. People laugh at, He's actually hilarious. It's a fucking he has this pillow. My pillow. You know, I mean, you see the guy. You see the guy. He's a walking joke. You know, and that's one of the biggest Trump guys around. You know, he has a. I mean, Trump has some bigger names than that. But I'm just saying, like, if we're gonna talk about like who's more dangerous, Zuckerberg or some of these CEOs or Goldman Sachs or whatever, I think Michael Lindell falls definitely at the bottom of the chain of command and having any kind of dangerous precedent that he or dangerous idea, pull on people. I mean, he doesn't have. He owns a pillow company. He's a former coke addict who people laugh at. He's in all these horrible evangelical movies that Brad Jones reviews, and they're hilarious. I mean, he's just laughing. He's a joke, and that's the only way that, And I mean, as far as seeing Trump as a joke that is just kind of tired, and we don't have to. We don't have to even tell that joke anymore. It's over. It's done. That's how the media and the pundits and the politicians should treat him. It should treat the Trump phenomenon and treat Trump. Now, at the same time, there is that dangerous part of it that is because of the way that America's gone the last 50, 60 years, where there is an actual discontent because of neoliberalism and so forth. And that's why populism is rising on the right and the left. Dennis Kucinich in the 2004 election, which was just a fringe candidate with a very hot wife, I might add. But Bernie Sanders was a front runner, versus Dennis Kucinich in 2004. I voted for Howard Dean in 2004, and I regret it to this day because I think Dennis Kucinich was a better candidate, especially considering how far gone Howard Dean has gone since then. So it's a complicated thing, I think. But yeah, the more attention you pay to something, the more people will. It's like Barnum and Bailey or some of these old like cliched things. It's like anything that you pay a lot of negative attention to, people will pay attention to. I mean, bands with parental advisory stickers on their album, they've found that they sell more than a lot of the time than bands that don't have that. It's almost a selling point. Tipper Gore probably handed Wasp millions of sales in the 80s by the trials, and all the the PMRC. What's this about? Fuck Like a Beast. I'm gonna buy the single. Oh, the first Wasp album. He probably sold 1 million records. At least like hundreds or tens of thousands of them were because of the attention that the right wing at the time paid attention to. So sensationalism, demagoguery, and an opposite type of an anti-demagoguery in a way, an extreme anti-cult. It's like communism versus fascism. It's like, you're not gonna really win as far as like the reason why they both feed each other, right? Like Germany in the 1920s. Communists were against fascists, and fascists were against communists, but fascists could maintain their power by talking about communism and and embracing anti-Semitism. So that's how these things work. You have to have an enemy to maintain your power, but if you really want to defeat your enemy, you're going to have to feed them of their power. And there's only one way with Trump and his movement, is by shutting the fuck up about it, moving on from it, acknowledging it when maybe it comes up, but make it a joke that nobody wants to hear anymore. That's about all.